There was a series of loud, curt, and regular knocks at the door of the adjoining room. Miss Birchner went pale and laid her hand on her heart. Kay was especially startled, as for a moment he had been quite unable to think of anything other than the events of that morning and the girl for whom he was performing them. He had hardly pulled himself together when he jumped over to Miss Birchner and took her hand. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I'll put everything right. But who can it be? It's only the living room next door. Nobody sleeps in there." "Yes, they do," whispered Miss Birchner into Kay's ear. "A nephew of Mrs. Grubach's. A captain in the army has been sleeping there since yesterday. There's no other room free. I'd forgotten about it, too. Why do you have to shout like that? You've made me quite upset." "There is no reason for it," said Kay, and now as she sank back onto the cushion, kissed her forehead. Go away," she said, hurriedly sitting back up. "Get out of here. Go. What is it you want? He's listening at the door. He can hear everything. You're causing me so much trouble." "I won't go," said Kay, "until you've calmed down a bit. Come over into the other corner of the room. He won't be able to hear us there." She let him lead her there. "Don't forget," he said, "although this might be unpleasant for you, you're not in any real danger. You know how much esteem Mrs. Grubach has for me. She's the one who will make all the decisions in this, especially as the captain is her nephew, but she believes everything I say without question. What's more, she has borrowed a large sum of money from me, and that makes her dependent on me. I will confirm whatever you say to explain our being here together, however inappropriate it might be, and I guarantee to make sure that Mrs. Grubach will not only say she believes the explanation in public, but will believe it, truly and sincerely. You'll have no need to consider me in any way. If you wish to let it be known that I have attacked you, then Mrs. Grubach will be informed of such, and she will believe it even without losing her trust in me. That's how much respect she has for me." Miss Birchner looked at the floor in front of her, quiet and a little sunk in on herself. "Why would Mrs. Grubach not believe that I've attacked you?" added Kay. He looked at her hair in front of him, parted, bunched down, reddish, and firmly held in place. He thought she would look up at him. Without changing her manner, she said, "Forgive me, but it was the suddenness of the knocking that startled me so much, not so much what the consequences of the captain being here might be. It was all so quiet after you'd shouted, and then there was the knocking. That's what made me so shocked. And I was sitting right by the door, the knocking right next to me. Thank you for your suggestions, but I won't accept them. I can bear the responsibility for anything that happens in my room myself, and I can do so with anyone. I'm surprised you don't realize just how insulting your suggestions are and what they imply about me, although I certainly acknowledge your good intentions. But now, please go. Leave me alone. I need you to go now even more than I did earlier. The couple of minutes you asked for have grown into half an hour, more than half an hour now." Kay took hold of her hand and then of her wrist. "You're not cross with me, though," he said. She pulled her hand away and answered, No, I'm never cross with anyone." He grasped her wrist once more. She tolerated it now, and in that way led him to the door. He had fully intended to leave, but when he reached the door he came to a halt as if he hadn't expected to find a door there. Miss Birchner made use of that moment to get herself free, open the door, slip out into the hallway, and gently say to Kay from there, "Now come along, please. Look!" She pointed to the captain's door, from under which there was a light shining. "He's put a light on, and he's laughing at us." "All right, I'm coming," said Kay, moving forward, took hold of her, kissed her on the mouth, and then over her whole face like a thirsty animal lapping with its tongue when it eventually finds water. He finally kissed her on the neck and her throat and left his lips pressed there for a long time. He did not look up until there was a noise from the captain's room. "I'll go now," he said. He wanted to address Miss Birchner by her Christian name, but did not know it. She gave him a tired nod, offered him her hand to kiss as she turned away as if she did not know what she was doing, and went back into her room with her head bowed. A short while later, Kay was lying in his bed. He very soon went to sleep. Before he did, he thought a little while about his behavior. He was satisfied with it, but felt some surprise that he was not more satisfied. He was seriously worried about Miss Birchner, because of the captain. Chapter 2. First Cross-Examination. Kay was informed by telephone that there would be a small hearing concerning his case the following Sunday. He was made aware that these cross-examinations would follow one another regularly, perhaps not every week, but quite frequently. On the one hand, it was in everyone's interest to bring proceedings quickly to their conclusion, but on the other hand, every aspect of the examinations had to be carried out thoroughly without lasting too long because of the associated stress. For these reasons, it had been decided to hold a series of brief examinations following on one after another. Sunday had been chosen as the day for the hearing so that Kay would not be disturbed in his professional work. It was assumed he would be in agreement with this, but if he wished for another date, then as far as possible he would be accommodated. Cross-examinations could even be held in the night, for instance, but Kay would probably not be fresh enough at that time. Anyway, as long as Kay made no objection, the hearing would be left on Sundays. It was a matter of course that he would have to appear without fail. There was probably no need to point this out to him. He would be given the number of the building where he was to present himself, which was in a street in a suburb well away from the city centre, which Kay had never been to before. Once he had received this notice, Kay hung up the receiver without giving an answer. He decided immediately to go there that Sunday. It was certainly necessary. Proceedings had begun, and he had to face up to it, and this first examination would probably also be the last. He was still standing in thought by the telephone when he heard the voice of the deputy director behind him. He wanted to use the telephone, but Kay stood in his way. "Bad news?" asked the deputy director casually, not in order to find anything out, but just to get Kay away from the device. No, said Kay. He stepped to one side, but did not go away entirely. The deputy director picked up the receiver, and as he waited for his connection, turned away from it and said to Kay, "One question, Mr. Kay. Would you like to give me the pleasure of joining me on my sailing boat on Sunday morning? There's quite a few people coming. You're bound to know some of them. One of them is Hasterer, the state attorney. Would you like to come along? Do come along." Kay tried to pay attention to what the deputy director was saying. It was of no small importance for him, as this invitation from the deputy director, with whom he had not gone on very well, meant he was trying to improve his relations with him. It showed how important Kay had become in the bank, and how its second most important official seemed to value his friendship, or at least his impartiality. He was only speaking at the side of the telephone receiver while he waited for his connection, but in giving this invitation the deputy director was humbling himself. But Kay would have to humiliate him a second time as a result. He said, "Thank you very much, but I'm afraid I will have no time on Sunday. I have a previous obligation." "Pity," said the deputy director, and turned to the telephone conversation that had just been connected. It was not a short conversation, but Kay remained standing confused by the instrument all the time it was going on. It was only when the deputy director hung up that he was shocked into awareness and said, in order to partially excuse his standing there for no reason, "I've just received a telephone call. There's somewhere I need to go, but they forgot to tell me what time." "Well, ask them then," said the deputy director. "It's not that important," said Kay, although in that way his earlier excuse, already weak enough, was made even weaker. As he went, the deputy director continued to speak about other things. Kay forced himself to answer, but his thoughts were mainly about that Sunday, how it would be best to get there for 9 o'clock in the morning, as that was the time that courts always start work on weekends.